evening, and welcome to the Murfreesboro City School Board of Education meeting. We will now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. We will at this time entertain a motion for the approval of our agenda.
So moved. Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Any disapprove? Thank you. Good evening, Dr. Gilbert,
Good
and to
evening.
all that are in attendance. Communications.
Yes, first on the communications is the Director of Schools Evaluation Report, and Mr. Randall Bennett is here for that.
Tonight. First of all, let me start out by commending you for conducting an evaluation. Those of you that attended fall district meetings a couple of years ago when the law was passed regarding a mandatory evaluation for superintendents, I spent a great deal of time explaining that, and then not long after that a federal judge struck down the entire law, not because of the evaluation component, but because of the language there that was going to create all the city school districts in Shelby County, and that was a little too specialized for the court's taste. So when they struck the law down, unfortunately, there was no severability clause, and that meant that the portion that required a superintendent's evaluation by law was also struck down. So that being the case, I'm always glad to see boards of education working to evaluate the superintendent, to give them feedback, because I think it's such an important part of the process. And with the state's emphasis on evaluation the last few years, I think it's a perfect opportunity for the board to lead by example. So I do commend you for that. And I'd also like to congratulate Dr. Gilbert for an excellent evaluation this year. Each of you have had a copy of this. I know you've had it electronically, and we provided you a paper copy tonight. Let me just go through a little bit of the different areas, and if you have questions, we will entertain those at the end. There are three major sections to the evaluation. The first is Appendix A, and that's the administrator's perceptions of the director's performance objectives. And if you look down there, you will see that on a scale of 4, overall Dr. Gilbert scored 3.61 with the administrators, so I think that's an excellent result, Moving on into the board section, you can see there were 6 different sections that we asked you to cover. The first was board relationships. The second was community relationships. The third, staff and personnel relationships. And then facilities and finance, vision, and student achievement. And as you can see, those 6 categories were 3.47 for board relationships, 3.89 for community relationships, 3.24 for staff and personnel relationships, 3.74 facilities and finance, 3.66 for vision, and 3.97 for student achievement, with an overall score for Appendix B being 3.66, which again is an excellent evaluation. Looking on to Appendix C, we take a look at the annual objectives, and again those were scored on that 4-point scale. And as you can see going through there, I'm not going to try to cover all of those, but those particular objectives, continuing on page 5 and also on page 6, end us up with a score of 3.66 for the annual objectives. And any comments from the administrators and board members are included on the next page. And then the summary page, the very last page, basically shows us that we've got 3.61 for the administrative perceptions, 3.66 for board assessment, and 3.60 for annual objectives. And that's an overall evaluation score, an average of 3.62 for the entire evaluation, which on a scale of 4 I think is an excellent result, and it's one that I hope that Dr. Gilbert is proud of, because I think it's certainly something worthy of being proud. So with that being said, let me stop and see if there's any questions. As you know, Dr. Grissom was the one who worked with you all on this, and she just asked me to come and report it because of my close proximity to you all. It's a long way from the northern part of Sumner County back down here. So I told her I'd be more than happy to go, and I'll try to answer any questions you might have if I can.
Mrs. Phillips?
Mine's not a question, just thank you so much for TSBA. I'm glad that they have helped us with this document. Hats off to Dr. Gilbert. I think she's the hardest working woman in our system and always has the children at her heart.
Thank you.
What if there, Mrs. Smith?
Thank you very much for conducting this. I would like to know just what you took from this. Of course, kudos for excellent review. But when you read the evaluation, what did you think, and how would you move forward?
Well, one thing I'm really proud of is when I look at this and when I look at what the state expectations are, and it's in Appendix C, I think it's really important that I have those quantitative measures that are in there. So if you look at all the way from number 5 really to the end, it really deals with academic data. And I think that's important because I think that we've seen with the last few years in the state, certainly the principals are held to that. When you look at their evaluations, part of it, of which we have no control, has to do in large part to the value added and to the scores that they have. So I think it's really important that those are in there. I'm not sure that all directors want or have this kind of detail, but I think it's important because when you're talking about the annual measurement objectives, when you're talking about teacher and principal evaluations, whether they're conducted with fidelity, those are things on which they're scored. And so I see no reason why I should not be scored on there too. I have to think back and remember that this was done the last part of the spring as far as the administrators. But what I will do with this is just as I would ask the principals to reflect on it, find where there's value in it, and move forward. But I think I do commend the board, although it's pretty stringent when you get to Appendix C. I think it's really important that I'm measured by the same that they are measured by, and so I think that's critical. To me, that's a critical part of this.
Thank you. It does need to be noted that it is for last year's school
Right.
year.
Mr. Barrett?
I thought it was great to see that our board assessment and the administrators' perceptions were pretty close together, which means I think we're all on the same page going forward. I think that was really good to see.
And I think it's important for the public to know that one reason that this is so late is because of that Appendix C and having to wait on the scores. So I think it's important for the public to know that this was done in a timely manner on the part of the administrators, but we had to wait until the data came in to really do a large part of this. So I think it's important for them to know that that's why now is when this is happening.
Mrs. Rainier and Mrs. Phillips?
Last year, when we did the evaluation for the previous year, which would have been 2011, I guess, we were running a little bit behind. When do we do this again now for 2013?
Well, obviously, it's going to be impossible to do with specific objectives until data comes in. And I know the state's promising to do better all the time, and I think they have made some progress toward that. But I think you're pretty much hamstrung by the fact that you don't have the data. You can't do a portion of the evaluation. Rutherford County does theirs similarly. As a matter of fact, we're collecting their evaluations now, and I'll be reporting to them the first week in December for the 2012-2013 year. So you're very consistent with that because you need the data before you can really complete the evaluation form.
Will we be able to, or is this a standard document from you, or can we make some adjustments to it? And one comment being made earlier was that it goes from kind of a rubric score of does something exceeds, consistent, usually, and then never. And it seems like there needs to be maybe another column in there, perhaps. And also I wondered if it would be possible, I think I heard that it was kind of up to us if we could perhaps on those measurable objectives, that was just done by the board. Perhaps some of the administrators also need to be involved in that, and maybe some teachers should be involved in some of it.
Well, I always think it's a good idea to have a healthy discussion among the board as to the evaluation instrument and how you want to go forward. there's no law or no regulation that really controls this, so it's up to each local Board of Education to make the determination of the types of things they want to include in evaluation, how it should be structured, so on and so forth. So I think that's a conversation that you all have to have as a board going forward, but we're certainly willing to assist.
Before we do this again.
Yes,
Okay.
before you do it again.
All right, thank you.
And really, the sooner the better, so that Dr. Gilbert will know what she's looking at for this school year.
Okay. Thank you.
I was just going to make a couple of comments. One is exactly what Ms. Rainier said, and that was we go from usually to never, and I don't think it's quite accurate to not have something in between usually and never. It's just not fair. And the vision we have certainly come up on since we evaluated that, because we had our whole big vision meetings and retreat about that. So I feel very good about that. That was my big concern. So I feel very good about that.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett.
Thank you very much.
for bringing
Thank
this
you.
to us.
Thank
Thank
you for
you.
coming.
Your next item of communication is we'd like to congratulate Board Chair Mary Wade, who was recognized as a member of the TSBA All-Tennessee School Board. So congratulations. It was very nice to be at the meeting and to see the board recognized as a board of distinction, and also to see Ms. Wade ascend those stairs as part of the school board. And while we're congratulating, and I know she's here tonight, and I'm glad that she is, but Robin Newell came to principal's meeting the other day with her trophy, was late to the meeting, which was very appropriate, but she is the winner of the spelling bee, and it was quite an event. So tough work. So congratulations, Robin.
Collier, who challenged Mrs. Newell, went down rapidly.
Well,
It's because she was giving the students the next day off, so that's why.
oh, that's right. Yeah. Yes, I do have to acknowledge Collier, because she was there and had the greatest supporters, which means that the money that's raised there. So thank you so much for that. And also was probably the most costume too. I thought was. But there was something about if she won that she was going to have a snow day the next day. So I'm not sure.
I just thought of it the same way, like when I go on the tennis court, as long as I look good, I can pull it off. So I thought maybe in the spelling bee, it would work the same way.
Absolutely. Well, thank you both for that. Read to Succeed started actually in Murfreesboro City Schools, so it's nice to see that Murfreesboro City Schools has a real role in that. I think the challenge that the principals were talking about is to make sure that the trophy stays in Murfreesboro City next year, so that should be interesting. We do want to congratulate the recipients of the City Schools Foundation grant and thank the City Schools Foundation for funding 23 grants, a total of $34,000. And I want to, last year you asked me to read off the grants, and so I think that it might be worthwhile to do that again this year, because these are teachers and employees who did make the effort to make application and have received grants. So if you would. Rosalind Mumbrim from Northfield has a grant, and the title of it is A Read to Learn Library. Denise Crumbaugh from Mitchell Nelson, and the title of her grant was Exemplary Students Read Exemplar Text. Karen Cook, Michelle Lloyd, and Shay Payne, who are at Discovery, their grant, Visual Math, Seeing is Believing. Rachel Everett from Scales, Connections, Integrating Reading Through Science and Social Studies. Kim Martijak, and I always mess up her name, and I apologize for that, from Black Fox, Red Cat Impact. Bess Turner from Discovery, Plant the Seeds, Read the Harvest. Owen Davis from Irma Siegel, the STAR Program, Unique Learning Systems. Rebecca Few, who is a math coach at Bradley and Mitchell Nelson, Math in Action. Debbie Hickerson from Cason Lane, the New Old School Math. Carissa Huffmeyer and the first grade teachers, Andrew McKnight, Deanne Stevens, Lori Lyles, Carrie Newberg, Kim Gamble, and Krista Brown are all from Scales, and their grant was titled Versatility with Versatiles. Tammy Pirtle from Black Fox, C2 plus M2 equals Success, Common Core plus Mobile Math. Shelley Gerter from Scales, the Elmo Document Camera. Diana Pope from Northfield, Quaver's Marvelous World of Music. Lauren Willard from Bradley, What's Crackin'? Shannon Minner from Mitchell Nelson, Interactive eBooks. Sarah Catalano and Nikki Brooks, Northfield, I Spy. Lindsay Cole from Scales Technology for our students. Neely Embry from Bradley, Don't Get Lost in Translation. Karen Carr from Discovery, If We Plant It, They Will Come. Craig Nelius from Pittard, Spuds in Tubs, Digging Deeper into Learning. Mary Orcutt from Northfield, Smart Innovations for Education. Greg Lyles and Candy Clifford and their district folks, World on Wheels. And Jessica Bloom, from Scales Abracadabra. So congratulations to those folks, and again, our deep thanks to the foundation for funding about $34,000 in grants.
Mrs. Renier.
Sorry, I have a question. This cumulative total, that's the $34,280 that was given?
Yes.
Is that correct? Well, I also want to mention that many of these names are repeating names from last year and the year before. So I do want to encourage the teachers to make sure that they apply for these funds, because some of these people are getting funds almost every year. So this is a good way to get something for your classroom.
Right, absolutely.
Great. Thank you. Thank you to Foundation.
And while we're mentioning the foundation, oh, I'm sorry, excuse me, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to echo that I would really like to thank the foundation for their financial support. Having these extras in the classroom means so much to the students and the teachers, and it's a lot of work to raise this money, so thank you.
Ms. Phillips.
And one last thing, I just enjoy so much reading the titles and hearing the titles, because the teachers are so creative with their titles. It makes me want to go in and sit in on these great classes and the things they're doing. So.
The foundation, while we're mentioning the foundation, their Excellence in Education event is January 24th, and we will be honoring Dr. Sidney and Liz McPhee, and the featured school for that event is John Pittard Elementary. So we invite the audience to certainly attend that, and it's always an exciting evening, a fun evening, and certainly Dr. McPhee and Ms. McPhee are worthy of being honored. And that will be January 24th. If folks are interested in tickets to that, they can call the city schools. With Lisa Trail can certainly help them with that. We want to congratulate Kim Frank, who is our behavior therapist. Well, she's our behavior specialist, but she is now a board-certified behavior therapist, and that's quite an accomplishment. So congratulations to Kim. And I'm going to ask Lisa, if you would come forward, please, and talk a little bit about inclement weather and what we do about that.
Well, I had a great plan for inclement weather, but it didn't work.
Well, Lisa is really looking forward to the 3 o'clock phone calls. She's tremendously excited.
Yeah, except when Collier does spelling bees, and it's just the next day. So inclement weather will be handled just like it has been in the past years. We will begin, we will make the phone call the day before, if at all possible. If not, we certainly want to try to make it before that first bus rolls out the door. So we will begin with Twitter. So if you're wanting to know the first thing that's going to go out, it's going to go on Twitter. It will do an all call to our parents. We will then contact our local media as well as our news stations, Channel 2, 4, 5, and 17. We'll also put it up on our website, and hopefully this all goes out simultaneously, but usually it is 3:30 in the morning, and it's hard to get them all going together. But our ESP, they are doing these snow days again this year, just like they did last year, in that when there is a snow day, there will be one school open for approximately 3 schools. So instead of opening all 12 schools, they'll open up central locations, and all of the ESP staff as well as the parents know what is designated as their snow school day, their school for snow days. Any questions? Okay.
Thank you. We'd like to announce that Addison Brown from Ms. Prater's first grade class at Mitchell Nelson is the winner of the Rutherford County Soil Conservation District poster contest in the K through first grade category. And the theme of the poster contest this year was, "Where does your water shed?" Addison and Ms. Prater were recognized at the Rutherford County Soil Conservation District annual dinner held on November the 7th. So congratulations to Addison. And then finally, we'd like to thank Bob Parks Realtor, Sonette P., taught her piano, by the way, and her colleagues for donating pumpkins for the 3rd through 6th grade pumpkin contest at Mitchell Nelson, and to Siegel High School Key Club members for volunteering to paint the pumpkins with the ESP kindergarten and 1st grade students. And those are your communications.
Thank you, Dr. Gilbert. We're now down to consent items. If there's no question about anything you see posted, we'll entertain a motion for the approval.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Action items, Mr. Anderson.
Yes, good evening, Board. Thank you. I want to tell you the process that we went through and the goals that were established when I put together the zoning plan. First thing was to make the rezoning plan last for 4 to 5 years, if at all possible. Next one was develop community schools with smaller geographic areas. Third item was make the new zones contiguous and eliminate pocket zoning. Use major thoroughfares and roads as boundaries for the zones when possible. Create a new zone for Overall Creek and provide room for growth to the west. Relieve overcrowding at John Pittard and enrollment pressures at Hobgood and Black Fox. To move the pre-K program to multiple schools closer to where the children reside and make Bellwood again a K through 6 school. Move Discovery School to Bellwood to provide the relief at John Pittard and Hobgood by recreating Reeves Rogers as a traditional pre-K through 6 school and give room to grow to the northeast side of the city. Then add 1 additional school, which now equals 4 total for CDC classrooms, to better serve the students by being closer to their homes whenever possible, and provide a transition for pre-K CDC within the same school building. The next item was propose a grandfathering and sibling policy that allows for a phasing in and flexibility process for the new zones to stabilize over a 3-year period. And the last item was to create a controlled choice school option for Mitchell Nielsen. Those were the goals that I approached the rezoning development plan with, and that is how we went through the program. We had 4 public meetings, each one lasting an hour and a half, so we had 6 total hours of public comment to talk with board members, talk with staff about how the plan was developed. We had on the internet, on our website, we had Ask MCS, we had write-in comments and questions, we had emails and phone calls, and we provided you with those documents. I'll be glad to answer any other questions you might have about the plan as it's presented tonight, and just turn it over to Ms. Wade.
Well, certainly, Mr. Anderson, we'd like to thank all that have been involved in this process, and certainly we want to thank our parents that had a chance to come out to the different schools and ask questions, look at the maps, and the maps were very informative. I saw board members looking them over really good and being able to explain some things and I was very impressed. Board members, do you have any questions? And I want to thank you for your time, and also your sending questions in to Mr. Anderson and asking them at our last meeting. Mrs. Smith and then Dr. Brown.
Two things at this moment. One thing that I've not really thought about, but the reason that we have such a cluster of schools, most of our schools obviously are built where our city was at one point. And so our population is just all grouped in together. So it was a really big challenge, I think, for you to set the zones. Of course, you used the major thoroughfares. Right. But that's just something for us to think about, that's why we have such a problem with the populations and the numbers for each school, is because they're all so closely built together. So that's just something that, the city has changed, we've expanded, but we still, the buildings that we have are still, they're not moving. So that was a big challenge. But one thing there's been a lot of questions about, a lot of concerns, and we have some representatives here from the preschools. If you could talk a little bit about your plans, about why you have initiated this change from having the preschoolers all together at Bellwood to branching out to all the different schools.
Okay. Well, one reason is because of the growth on the east side of town, and the fact that that Reese Rogers is really at a prime place for a school when you look at the growth that's gone over there. So that was part of it. Instructionally, and I have met with that faculty, and also have met with a couple of individual teachers even, and had some emails. But instructionally, what you want is a continuum all the way from when a child enters school to as far as you can get. So one thing that this will provide is certainly that continuum from pre-K through 6. And so you don't have to have that transition. It makes as much sense to have that transition as it would if we put first grade in one school and second grade in another school and third grade in another school. So if we can get the preschoolers into a school where hopefully they will stay throughout that sixth grade year, it's really helpful. The other thing, as far as support within those schools, you have music teachers, you have phys ed teachers, you have art teachers, you have some supports there that you don't have in the preschool when you have the entire preschool by itself. And then finally, as far as the teachers, what we know now is that more and more we need to see that vertical alignment of curriculum. So it's really important, for example, for our second grade teachers to be talking with their third grade teachers on a regular basis, and to be talking with their first grade teachers on a regular basis. And this will enable that. So I think there are all kinds of reasons for it, but those are prime reasons that come to mind right now that are basic reasons. Finally, when you're looking at parents, if you have a school where a parent is involved for 1 year, it's very different than when they can be involved for 7 years. And so the parents then become part of the PTA. They become part of that moving forward of that child. And they can say, here are teachers that my child's going to have in 2 years. Here's the curriculum I know they're going to have. So it's educationally it makes sense.
So are the art and music teachers trained to work with preschoolers?
Yes.
Thank you. Dr. Brown.
Realizing that rezoning is never easy, I've attended all of the public hearings regarding the zoning plan. There are positives about this plan. There are some concerns that I've personally discussed with Mr. Anderson as late as yesterday. However, in looking at the plan overall and the goals of the plan, I really feel that this plan is a good plan. The issues that I have concerns about, I've discussed with Mr. Anderson, and I think there are reasonable solutions to those concerns. So in order to focus the further discussion, what I'm going to do is go ahead and make a motion that we approve the proposed rezoning plan as presented to become effective for the 2014-2015 school year, and it will supersede all previous zoning plans, that there will be a grandfather clause for rising 5th and 6th graders that includes their younger siblings, and to change Mitchell Nielsen from a traditionally zoned to a controlled choice school.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Question?
Comment?
Comment.
I echo a lot of what Dr. Brown said. This is a pretty logical way, using the major roads as boundaries, and also with the neighborhood focus. I like that. I think that's just going to strengthen our neighborhoods in the city going forward, and people will be able to interact better, or get to know their neighbors better by going to this neighborhood school. And we're still growing as a district, so hopefully this will get us 4 or 5 years down the road before we have to revisit it again. But the way we're growing, maybe not. I hope so. But
You have a question, Mrs. Rainier, or a comment?
Comment, I guess.
Okay.
Is this the time?
Yes.
I think we need to make sure that we're clear, because I know we discussed this at our last meeting about the younger siblings, because your motion said something about the younger siblings being grandfathered in. But parents need to understand that that's with their own transportation.
Yes.
We're not providing that transportation. So that point needs to be clarified, I think.
Mrs. Phillips.
There's a lot that I want to say about this zoning plan. The first thing I want to do is congratulate Mr. Anderson and his staff. I know it's a tremendous job. It's you feel it's almost thankless, but really thank you for your hard work. I agree with Dr. Brown. There are many excellent elements about this plan, a lot of good things about this plan. I've seen so much that's good. I've seen the community meetings. I loved the way our translators were there working with the families. Even one of our vice principals was there translating and talking to the families. I was so proud of that. It was so impressive. And there's just, I understand many of the tenets by which you design this plan, and I am not a fan of pocket zoning. I'll have to say, I'm glad to see a lot of the pocket zoning gone. However, in really, really studying the changes that this creates for a couple of our school zones, I understand why the pocket zones existed, what it was they were trying to achieve with the pocket zones, even though it wasn't perhaps my favorite part of the earlier zoning plan. I know what they were trying to achieve. I understand that as a parent, if my children were not in high school but were in an elementary school still, I love the idea of community schools. I love that idea. Now, in the proposed zoning, I would argue that maybe the folks on January Street don't agree that Mitchell Nielsen is necessarily their neighborhood. And maybe the folks in Mitchell Nielsen don't agree that January Street is their particular neighborhood. I think that Ms. Smith's point is very valid about the proximity of the schools, but still these are very different neighborhoods in many ways. And so, thinking that it's all just good neighborhood zoning, I think it's more complex. The issues are a little more complex, perhaps. Our city has grown, the demographics have changed, but even though you didn't consider the demographics as part of the tenets of your proposed rezoning, that doesn't mean they're not important. I do believe that they are important, and in 2 of our school zones, the demographics are going to change significantly. Our teachers are fabulous. I believe wholeheartedly, and I know they believe, that children are children. Children are children. Children are children that they will love, they will teach, they will give their very best to every child that comes in their door. It doesn't matter if the children are on the free and reduced lunch program or not. On the other hand, it would be naive to say that all children learn the same, or all children have the same struggles or the same challenges or the same issues. So changing the demographics significantly in a school does change what happens in that school, and the different strategies and the different things that the teachers and the families the things that they deal with and confront. Now, at Mitchell Nielsen, we are zoning out about 120, if I have that number correct, children who are not on the free and reduced lunch program, and zoning in about 120 children who are. That is a significant change. Those 2 changes, they are significant. And on top of that, we are starting a new initiative there as a focus on leadership. I think the focus on leadership is a brilliant idea. Absolutely brilliant. Hats off to Dr. Gilbert for it. I think it's going to be fabulous. But I think that's a lot going on in a school at the same time. The changing demographics and then the brand new initiative. And so that also making it a choice school. The goal, as my understanding is, of making it a controlled choice school is to be able to keep some of those families who are so happy there, they're thriving there, and so vested in the Mitchell Nielsen community. I think that's a great idea too. This is my concern. Once those families have moved on out, what are we going to do to get new families to come in and take those places? We're going to have to monitor the demographics at the school after those kids get out. We're going to have to monitor them every couple of years to see how that school is thriving. The goal is that this is a 5-year plan, but if we see that school begins in any way to struggle, then we need to be willing as a board to go back in and tweak that some. I think we really, really, really are going to have to stay on top of that. And that's the only way it works for me, is to have a commitment to being vigilant. I'm almost done. I had a lot to say, and I care about this. The board has only broad, as a team, as a group, we have a few responsibilities: budget, tenure, zoning, vision. That pretty much covers it. So I take the zoning very seriously, and I know each of you do too. My last couple of comments have to do with our special education changes. Hats off to Mr. Marlin. I have been so impressed by how sensitive he has been to the children and families, and it just warms my heart. As a person who started out at Peabody College in special education, that means a great deal to me. I'm with Dr. Gilbert on the preschool. I thought the Bellwood Bowden idea was perfect for its time. But I always saw down the road that there would come another time when we would have preschools in all of our schools eventually. I think that may happen eventually, and it makes sense to me that would happen. The one thing I would like to say is I would like to find some way to continue the legacy of Miss Bowden's name. She was so... She was in the forefront, the frontier of preschool education for children in this country, not just in the city or the state, but in this country. I would like to find some way to continue to honor Miss Bowden's name. And with that said, one last thing is Black Fox. There is a significant change at Black Fox. I know those teachers are up to it. I had a conversation with Ms. Goodwin at Barfield today. Because of the city annexing more property over by that school, they have a large percentage of city school kids. She was very gracious. I'd love to get all those kids back. But if they are they're like not over 970 kids. I'm wondering if we need to look at the continued growth over there in the future and see if that may affect our building plans in the future. Those are my comments. I really appreciate y'all being patient. This is something that's very, very dear to my heart, and listening to me with such attention and graciousness.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Ridley, do you have the motion? Would you read the motion and call the roll, please, ma'am?
Dr. Brown read the motions from the recommended motions. Motion to approve the proposed rezoning plan is presented to become effective for the 2014-15 school year, which will supersede all previous zoning plans. The motion to allow students currently in 4th or 5th grade, rising 5th or 6th graders, may remain in their current school grandfather if they are rezoned to a new school location. No transportation service would be available for this option, but students can complete their elementary schooling at the school if they can provide their own transportation. Motion to allow younger siblings who have an older brother or sister taking advantage of the 4th and 5th grade grandfathering option can also attend the school as long as both are in the school when their zoning plan is implemented. No transportation service will be available for this option. The motion to change the Mitchell-Nielsen schools from traditionally zoned schools to controlled choice schools with a special focus on leadership.
Ms. Wade,
Excuse me. Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to ask some questions before we went to the vote. Is
Okay,
that...
I'm sorry. I didn't see your hand for I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. And Dr. Brown has had his hand up too, so his was up before mine.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Let me go back to Dr. Brown, and then since we're still we got away from questions because it went into comments, so that's where I kind of lost my bearing. But Dr. Brown and then Ms. Smith.
Well, this is just a comment in response to some of Ms. Phillips' concerns, and I have discussed those concerns with Mr. Anderson. And to reiterate a comment that I made at the last board meeting, I don't feel that the Murfreesboro City Schools will be successful until all schools are performing at that level of excellence where it doesn't matter which school a student is attending, that the education will be the same in every school in Murfreesboro City.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Ms. Smith?
Thank you, Dr. Brown. I totally agree with you. There are three factors, things I wanted to talk or comment about, ask about. I wanted to hear a little more about the leadership school
Okay, sure.
at Mitchell Nelson. And I also wanted to have more of a plan and commitment about the Discovery School and about all of the, that there is a commitment to the Discovery School. I'd like for someone official other than myself to say something like that. And also about all of the materials that the parents have generously contributed to the school system. And then I didn't know Ms. Bowden, but I have to tell you, I've had a lot of people tell me how fabulous she was, and that I don't like to have things that are named for people go away, so I agree that would be really nice to continue to own. So anyway, those are my, thank you, Ms. Wade, for letting me jump in. But if you would go ahead with the other things.
Okay, sure. As a matter of fact, and I need to go back, Ms. Phillips, but when we started the preschool program, shortly after we started that, when we began to receive money, this would have probably been about 99, 2000, when we began to receive the state money, when they first implemented the early childhood education program. We at that time had our preschool program called the Ruth Bowden Preschool Program, and I think I'd like to look at that before. I would like to find something appropriate, but to me it makes sense that there would be something associated with that, so I appreciate that very much. As far as Discovery School, I think there's a real commitment to that school. I think when you look at the work that, for example, that's happening at that school that Ms. Barch is doing over there, I think we'll see that expanded for the gifted. And we may have gifted in every school, and I understand that, but she also is working with those teachers for a higher performance there to make sure that every child in that school, just as in every other school, is having their needs met. I think there's a commitment to, and I'm going to let Mr. Anderson refer to the materials, but as far as the programming of that school, as far as the commitment to that school, I don't think there's any question that exists. I'll let you address materials. Now, let me say that as far as personnel, and I can't see any reason for shifting personnel in that particular school, but when we start looking at schools at the end of the year, the principals start looking at schools and where we need personnel. We're very, very conscientious about who fits where, and there have been instances where teachers, and I can think of several, just as recent as last year, where there was a transfer made and those teachers are thriving now where they are. So that's why I was with the faculty later this afternoon, and I said we're really not even looking at personnel issues until later this spring, because we have teaching and learning that has to happen. So as far as reference to the personnel, I don't see that this year would be any different than any other year as far as that's concerned, particularly with that school.
One of the very positives about the school is that we're able to pick up the entire school, basically the faculty, the students, and just move them to another school. It's not like rezoning the students, so that's very positive. Some of the things that the parents and the community has done over there is to put some equipment and things in that school based on their fundraising efforts and things like that, and we recognize those efforts by those parents and that school community. One of the main things they put in was the smart boards in the classrooms. We recognize that we either need to move those smart boards or buy new ones to backfill that, since it was money donated to do that. Another big item was the science lab that they got some grants for on that, and that would be easily to replicate at Bellwood. Another one that's kind of out there, literally out in the playground, is the playground structures. Bellwood has the best playground structures we have for K through 2 or 3. What we don't have at that school, obviously, is the upper grades. Well, the structure that was put in at Discovery School was absolutely a wonderful setup in considering moving pieces of equipment, it costs the district basically 50% of the cost of what it cost originally just to pick it up and move it. It doesn't make sense to us to be moving equipment that was put in place and is there. What we intend to do is look at the equipment that's currently on the Bellwood campus and make sure we have good equipment to come in and cover the upper grade levels to make sure we have that adequately handled. But that's how we've looked at this. We will be putting together our budget numbers on what's the best way to proceed, and then we'll be coming back to the board, obviously, with our proposal and what we'll be doing.
The other thing that Ms. Smith asked about was Mitchell Nelson, and I want to tell you, I think I'm probably as excited about this as I have been anything. I think it's going to be amazing. The reason that we moved to control choice was because so many parents wanted to stay in that school, and so we heard what they were saying, and I think it is important, and I think that this school has the potential. When we look at Hobgood, for example, there are 53 children that are coming into that school from within the city. I think you're going to see the same thing at Mitchell Nelson. I think there are 88 children that could choose to stay at Mitchell Nelson next year, and I would be very surprised if most of those don't, because we already know there's a partnership there with Vanderbilt. We'll be meeting in, I guess, a couple of weeks to try to expand that partnership. We have met with the College of it's the College of Behavioral and Health Sciences at MTSU. They changed that title a couple of years ago. But we met with some folks from there, and they are very excited about partnering there. They're excited about interns there. We tentatively have called the partnership the Center for Collaborative Leadership and Learning, but it is new and we have not settled on that yet. But there are leadership programs already going on at the university. For example, there's a Dean Series. We see that as being a real resource for us for bringing people into the school. We see the alumni as real resources for us for bringing people into the school to talk with the children, and then perhaps to have a whole school seminar or a Socratic seminar about what was said. I see that school as being the one where you would have children that are doing public service announcements, where you would be having a speakers bureau, where you really have that school focused on what's called applied leadership, which means not just studying leadership in theory, but actually applying that in service learning in the community. So we're very excited about it. We met with the agri-science department today and talked about gardening. So I think it's going to be a real chance for something unique at an elementary school level. I know that there are some at middle school levels that are based on Covey. I think for us to work with MTSU, and particularly with the kind of leadership programs that they have there, is going to be tremendous for that school. So I think, and I think Ms. Newell probably agrees with me, that in talking with her faculty, we really see this as a possibility of a model for the state. I don't know that anything's been done like this before in an elementary school, but I think there's a real need for, if you think about what we're hearing from the business community and the need for 21st century skills that are work skills like perseverance, like empathy, all of those things, I think this school has a real chance for doing that. And I think the location of it is perfect. I think the history of the school is perfect for that. And we're looking at the possibility of MTSU even maybe being able to teach classes there, having interns there. And so, again, we're in the very preliminary stages, and I even hesitate to say anything publicly about that. But I do know that MTSU is a tremendous partner, and I do know Vanderbilt's a tremendous partner. And the other day when I talked to the faculty, there seemed to be a lot of excitement about that. So I think the parents will be thrilled with this, and I think that it's going to be a very exciting time for Mitchell Nelson and for that school.
Well, thank you so much for your explanations, and board members, thank you for your questions. Are we ready to vote? Ms. Ridley, if there are no more questions, call the roll. Oh, I'm sorry. Mrs. Renier?
No, I'm slow. We have to vote on this tonight. In our time frame of things.
There's a motion on the floor. The motion's been seconded. Unless it voted down and you have another motion, right now this motion is out there to be voted on.
And if I could comment, we need to move forward with this because we have some personnel decisions we have to make. We're looking at going into the main part of instruction when we come back in January, and so I very much would appreciate the board making a decision tonight.
Did you have another question, Mrs. Renier, beside that one?
I have one more question. It's just a zoning question, since it's related to this.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but I do.
That's okay.
January Street, is it closer to Bradley than Mitchell Nielsen?
It may be, but the capacity of Bradley can't handle it.
Now, I was curious about that. How many choice students are coming into Bradley?
About 200.
So if Bradley was no longer a choice school, these kids on January Street would be able to go to a neighborhood school closer to them.
I think one of the things that you have to consider is transportation, and right now you have Rover that goes from you have Rover that goes from that area to Mitchell Nelson. We're looking at Bradley at 175 students that are choice. And I think what that school has done as far as the arts, one of the things that I was talking to Dr. Fowler about this weekend is that the performance that they're having currently, and I encourage everyone to go to it, with the Yes Virginia, she was telling me that at least half those students are choice. I'm very pleased with what Bradley has done with the arts integration. I think it's a true arts integration school. I think that what we're seeing as far as the awards that they're looking at Bradley receiving, it's part of, and I wish Dr. Fowler were here, but it's part of a major study, and the reason that school was chosen was because of arts integration. You certainly have one of the best music teachers in the state there. You certainly have a dynamic drama teacher, and I would really hesitate to do anything with that choice right now, because I think that faculty has worked extremely hard, as has the administration in the arts integration, and the people that have chosen to come there, the students who have chosen to come there. I think there's been a reason for that, and
I understand all that, and I know it's impressive, but I just have a hard time with moving city school kids out of a closer school so choice kids can come. I do have a struggle with that. Even though they're doing great things, I just have a little bit of trouble with that. So.
Don't choice students help with that factor that you had a problem with, though?
Yes, but if we're not considering that in our zoning tenants, if we are making it, if our goal is to make community schools as opposed to zoning for demographics, then what's our commitment? Are we walking? Because if we're going to do one, are we going to do the other? Are we going to try to walk the line between the two? Because if that's the only place we're not walking the line, then something's not consistent. But I see your point. And I don't know, because I don't know those kids that are coming in a choice. I don't know much about their demographics.
And I'm really hesitant to talk about demographics, but I think that Dr. Fowler would be very hesitant to not have those choice students.
It's just something to throw out there and think about,
Right.
Because, which philosophy are we going to try to follow?
Let me make one suggestion. We're a policy-based group. A lot of the things that have come up tonight, you can address it in a policy later on. I know you want to monitor the demographics at a school. A policy. We could sit down and work a policy with Mrs. Baker that may work that out and help you continue to monitor it. Maybe you want to monitor every 2 years. But some things we can monitor a little bit better. If there are no more questions, certainly I appreciate all your comments and questions that you've had tonight. If there are no more, then let me look around. No. Mrs. Ridley.
Mr. Barrett?
Yes.
Dr. Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Phillips?
Aye.
Ms. Renier?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Ms. White?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Your next item is the approval of the calendar, and I wanted to talk with you a little bit about the reasoning behind this calendar. It looks a little different, but there's a reason. When we look at a calendar, we look at what the county is doing that's necessary. And when you look at this calendar, we are one day away from the county. We have that our first full day for students is Thursday, the 7th of August. The county's first full day of students is August the 8th. What we heard from teachers and from administrators was that they really liked the parent-teacher conferences being built into the year, and so we did that. The other thing that I thought that was really important is that we end before Memorial Day. The county has a teacher work day on the 26th, which is the Tuesday after Memorial Day, and they also have an abbreviated day on Wednesday the 27th. But I really thought it was important for us to end before Memorial Day, so we were able to do that. So the way that we were able to get our calendar as close to the county as possible for families and yet be able to work in those 2 days is we took out, there were 2 in-service days that were relatively, when they were scheduled in the county, really didn't feel that we would need those at that particular time, and so we were able to move those to the front of the calendar and also to have the 12 hours that the teachers would earn as in-service days. So if you look at the front of the calendar, what you have is July 29th, the teachers and educational assistants, those who work the 200-day calendar, would come in on the 29th. That would be a school-based work day. Normally we have our in-service day that day, but because we have so many moves, I really thought it would be pretty smart to have a school-based work day that day. Then we have the system-wide in-service, and I'm going to hold that as flexible. We may need to move it later on because they may need more time in the schools. So we may flip-flop it, for example, with the school-based in-service, but for right now we're system-wide in-service, and then school-based in-service, 2 school-based in-service days, and then 2 teacher work days. I think it's important when we think about the teachers and the staff and the administrators that we give them as much front loading as we can for next year. We certainly plan, Mr. Anderson, to have the schools completed and everything moved and ready to go by the time that first work day happens. But we still have faculties that have to gel. And so I think that it's really important to give them that time. So that's why you have this calendar constructed the way that it is constructed. The half-day PLC days, we always match what the county is going to do. I will tell you that I've requested that they do those on Fridays, but I have no control over that whatsoever. Well, I have no control over that. We have no control. So they have to do what they need to do, and I understand that. But I do think it's important for us to match those PLC days with theirs. So that's what you have as the calendar. The first student day, the first full day for students would be on August the 7th. Half day on August the 6th. We had the half day and the full day, and in talking with the teachers, they felt that worked pretty well this year. And then we would be ending on the Friday before Memorial Day. So that is your calendar.
Ms. Renier?
I know how much work this takes, so thank you so much. I also know how long and how many years we had begged for these parent conference days to be included in the calendar. And I know, talking to teachers, how much they loved it. Their participation was better as far as parents coming to the conferences. They said they were only exhausted one day instead of the period of 2 weeks, so it's been a really advantageous for the teachers. And I'm sure the parents, too. They know ahead of time, this is the day for parent conferences. I'll work my lunchtime out so I can go to school. And I'm just thrilled. I have goosebumps. I'm so happy about it, and I know they are, too, so thank you so much.
Mrs. Phillips?
And I just have to request, for the sake of the parents who don't live nearby, that we commit to making sure that they have appointment times, too. Either earlier or later,
right,
or another day that they have access to the teacher for that conference.
Right.
If there are no more questions or comments, we'll entertain a motion for the approval of the 2014-15 school calendar.
So moved.
Seconded.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Are there any that oppose? No. Thank you. Reports and information.
Be right back. Okay, we will see if this works. I wanted to give you an academic update because the state report card has come out, and we're awfully proud of what that state report card shows. I understand the governor is excited about the NAEP scores, but we're excited about what the teachers and administrators in this school district have done. So I do have a PowerPoint that I would like to share with you. The first picture on here is a little girl that was taken at Discovery Center when we had the Hispanic Heritage Day. And I really like that picture because she's twirling, she's put on her costume, and she's twirling, and she's happy. And I think if we're going to look at individual children, then we have to see, when we talk about scores and when we talk about numbers, we need to see faces. And so it's important for us, when we're going through these, to see those faces. What we always say is we can do this. We're Murfreesboro City Schools, and we can do this. And at this point, I'm going to ask, please, for principals, central office staff, teachers that are here, I want you to come stand, if you would, please, because they do the work. And I'm blessed to work with them. Ty, come on up. Sherry, if you all will just come stand. I think it's important for folks for the board to know, as they do so well already, but to see the folks that make this happen, because it's not the director of schools. Lisa, Sandy, come on up. The state report card looks very different than it's ever looked before, and there's a lot of stuff on the website. But when you look at the TVOS composites, and TVOS has to do with how well individual schools are doing, individual teachers are doing. In this case, it's individual teachers, and it's this year. So our teachers, when you look at what happened there, the composite is all of the content areas. It's not just the numeracy and the literacy, it's all the content areas. 5 is as high as you can get, and so the teachers, the students received 5. Teachers also 5 in literacy, 5 in numeracy, and then when you look at literacy and numeracy together, again, in all the areas where we could score a 5, we were able to do that. So I think that is something that needs to be recognized. As far as accountability, we met all of our achievement goals. We still have some work to do on gap closures. There are some friends of mine who say it's very, very almost impossible to close gaps if you're growing all students. But I know that we have some work to do with a couple of areas of our subgroups with gap closures. But as far as the accountability, we met all of our achievement goals in reading and math and science and in social studies, all 4 content areas. And then another one that I think really has to do with what we're doing with intervention. When you look at the number of students, the percentage of students who are below basic, between 2010 and 2013, we have cut that number in half in all of the subgroups. So when you look at all the subgroups, our below basic students, we have cut that number in half. And I think that's pretty amazing, and I think that has to do with the work that we've done with intervention, the work that the teachers have done, the dividing up, the intervention times that we've had. So that's something to be recognized. So when you look at achievement then, in 2010, we had straight Bs, also in 2011, and then this year we have straight A's. You'll remember that in 2010 we were on School Improvement 2 status. We were having to hold $250,000 in title money because we were having to provide choice for some of our students, and that is no longer the case. So we are solidly where we need to be with achievement. Achievement has to do with value added. It's growing enough every year that you get those percentages of advanced and proficient high enough. And so the folks who are standing behind me have certainly done that. And then finally, our growth this year. In 2010, you can see what the scores were, or what the grades were. We had a D in math, we had a C in reading, we had a C in science, and a B in social studies. And this year we had A's with the exception of science, which we will work on. But when you look at the accountability really rests so heavily on reading and math. And for us to have an A in math, and then this year to have that A in reading that we've been wanting so badly, is really amazing. So again, going back to that individual child and what we've done there, I can't thank the people who I get to work with daily. I can't thank the teachers enough. I know the hard work they've done, because they've done this in the midst of some pretty tough requirements from the state and the federal government. You were referring to demographics. They've done this in the middle of changing demographics, and they've done it with great change in every school. And so I thank the principals for their leadership. I thank the board for its leadership in allowing us to do what we needed to do to get the scores where they need to be, and all the support staff, the administrators, the district administrators. It's just really been remarkable to watch these folks and to be able to work with them, and to know that they know where we're headed, and to that determination that children will learn and children will succeed, and we will focus on the whole child. So I want to thank you all for your work, and to all those teachers who are out there and principals who are out there that aren't here. District staff, really is remarkable to work with them every single day. And again, kudos to you all for supporting what we needed to do in the school district to move it forward.
Ms. Grenier?
Well, I just have one comment. This is American Education Week. Thank you to everybody on our staff, every student, every teacher, every principal, assistant principal, librarian, PE teacher, whomever. Everybody who's involved with our kids, because you do this every day. It's hard there in the trenches. You've got all these demands coming from everywhere, and you've done it, and just look at what you've done. It's just great. We're so proud of you. Thanks.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Dr. Gilbert. Reports and information, Mr. Anderson, if there are no more comments or questions. Mr. Anderson?
Okay, the monthly budget totals. Last year at this time, we were $3,356,000 in the hole. As you know, this is when we're in the red at this time of year. So I'd like to do a little advertisement for the city. With the holidays coming up, please shop in Murfreesboro. We can have our tax dollars stay here and support education in Murfreesboro. So thank everyone for that. Revenue-wise, we're doing fine as far as the income. We're at this is the time of the year we're at 33% of the year, and our income is at 23.8. As you know, it catches up later when the taxes start coming in, property and sales tax. Last year at this time we were at 22.5, so we're in good shape there. On the expenditure side, we're a total at 28.7. Last year at this time we were 28.5. If you look, we put a little footnote at the bottom of the page there. One of the items is for the technology that we've started to purchase the infrastructure for. We haven't gotten with the city as far as how that's going to be handled, reimbursement, but we had to get that going, and so we had to put it in our financial report, and you can see we've bought $580,000 worth of technology already, and we'll work out with the city on how that's going to be handled. But we've already invested that, so that's had to come out of our financial report at this time to get it here on time. Does anyone else have any questions for me on the financials?
So when do the computers enter the classrooms?
When will they arrive?
When will they arrive? When will the students get their hands on the laptops?
Okay, well, teachers are going to be first, and teachers can get them and get used to them a little bit, and that's supposed to come here after Thanksgiving, and we're projecting the 1st of January to have the student computers start rolling in.
Great.
Sound like a winner. Thank you. Thank you.
We hope.
You have a question, Ms. Phillips?
I did have a question. I was just wondering if there were going to be some training sessions. Are they going to require any? The teachers are going to require any training with these?
Dr. Gilbert?
Yes, and Karen, do you want to address this, because you've really been working with this quite a bit? Karen has been working with Mickey and Trent, who are our IT coaches, and also with the instruction team has already been doing some work, so that's the reason I'm asking her to update you about that.
We have started some of the training already, particularly some of the software training that will be the same on both the Macintosh platform as well as the PC platform. So there's been several things that we've been doing as an instruction team. We have some trainings that have been going on in the buildings to kind of prepare our teachers for some of the new software programs. We've already imported all of the students into the software, so the teachers won't have to do that themselves. So as soon as they get their computers and their students log in, the students will have logins, then they can have access to the software that we have. We are planning to do some work with the Windows 8 operating system, and we've been working with Microsoft. There's a lot of things that teachers can do online, and then they can kind of do it on their own time and make that happen. But we'll also offer some classes during the school day, at their planning time, after school, and if they prefer, face-to-face training. So we'll offer different kinds of training. So our goals this year is to really get us converted over to the Windows 8 and develop a comfort level with that, and then make sure that the students have access to the software applications that we're initiating this year, and that's our big goal for this year. And then this summer, we'll move forward with some more in-depth training with our teachers, and it'll be ongoing with our tech coaches all the way. But right now, in the middle of the year, we feel like if we can accomplish that, we'll be really proud, and then we'll move forward to go deeper.
Thank you. I had a follow-up question.
Okay.
Nowadays, everyone is so much more techno-savvy, and I'm sure our teachers are too. But remembering Mr. Hopper, I have to say, with the best equipment available, there are teachers who are not going to be using it very much. What are we doing to help those teachers step into the future?
I'll answer that, and I'll let you answer if you want to add. I think the professional learning communities will really help that. I think that when you're thinking about teachers planning together, part of that will be the technology. I think the fact that they're going to have this many computers is going to push that too. So I think that the PLC work, where everything is pretty transparent now, I think that you'll find that teachers are helping teachers more than they ever have, and part of that will be let me show you, let me help you. But then of course we'll have the coaches will be in the schools too, so that will help.
And
Karen,
I think there's also an emphasis on looking for use of technology in our teacher evaluation system, in the team rubric. Okay. It's in there, it's very clear, and the teachers have, even if they're not as proficient as others, they've learned to use some of the presentation tools and some of the tools that we provide with our textbooks, and they've come away. Now, where our real work happens is making sure that we're able to involve the students in that at the level we need to, and that's where I see the biggest work, is just getting them moved into that new platform and then making sure that we're using those tools in a powerful way for student learning. And so that will really be the next step, and a step we'll continue to work on.
Thank you.
Ms. Ranier?
Do we have a plan for keyboarding skills for the children who will be taking these tests online?
We do. We have purchased a program called Type to Learn. It's a program that helps reinforce literacy skills as they're learning to type. So it's not your typical Mavis Beacon kind of program. Right. So we tried to make it as painless as we could for the classroom teachers, and instruction-wise, we plan to start that in second grade. It's pretty evident that students in second grade can begin that kind of keyboarding, and then this year, all students will be keyboarding, and probably for the next few years till we build that capacity in our students to feel more comfortable with that online testing format.
But don't they have to, fourth, fifth graders take the writing assessment? Isn't that going to be online?
Yes, it is. This year, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. And we're going to be pedaling as hard as we can once those computers come in to make that a priority for students. And some schools have some programs that they're using, and there's some things online that they're pointing their students to as well. But as far as having a systematic plan for keyboarding, it will start with this program beginning in second grade.
Maybe we could encourage parents.
It would be very helpful.
If you have these programs at home, let your children use them.
And I know the students will be concerned about that, and the teachers are concerned about it. But I want to make it understood that this year is a trial run.
Right.
And those assessment scores won't be held against the students or the district. We'll use that data to help guide us for the future. But this is an opportunity for us to take this assessment online to help us get ready for what would be coming next year. So they won't be penalized for that.
Good.
Okay, Mrs. Phillips.
I had heard that they've changed the writing assessment, and instead of there being one prompt now, there's two. Is that correct?
I believe there will be, in the past, we had our writing assessment, just about everybody in the state took it one day or another within a 2-day window.
Mm-hmm.
With us taking it online, they've increased that window to a multiple-day window.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there probably will be some additional prompts as well, but we don't have to worry about the test security quite as much as we did in the past. So there'll be additional prompts available for students. So they'll have more than one. So it'll be whichever one comes up on your computer is the one you'll answer, from my understanding. And that was probably, I think we'll see a different look when we go to the online testing, because in the past, all of our children had to take reading on one day, all of them had to take math on another day, and that will look very different with the PARCC testing in the future and the online assessments. Hopefully it won't be as stressful for our students.
Thank you, Mrs. Hawkins. If nothing else, Mr. Anderson, we'll yield back to you.
Sure. The enrollment numbers, I think one of the most interesting things is our attendance percentage for the last 2 months has been at 97%. I can't remember a time that stayed that high for 2 months in a row. So I think that really speaks well if the kids want to come to school. That's great. Also, our PTR ratio for K through 3 is 19.13 to 1, and 4 through 6 average is 19.91. Our district average is 19.41 on our PTR ratio. We have stabilized on our enrollment right now. One of the biggest jumps is our special ed K through 6, which has gone up significantly from where it ended last year. As you can see, we're up 49 students in that. We had a very large pre-K special ed class move in, and not as many sixth graders went out of the district. So that one increased quite a bit. But if anyone has any questions about our numbers.
Mr. Barrett.
I just had a quick question. With the rezoning we just passed, that's going to affect the PTR ratios at some of these schools next year, right?
Yes, it will, because you'll have some schools with smaller capacity. The bigger the number of students, the easier it is to hit your ratios. The smaller the number, the more difficult it is to hit the ratios, and typically end up being a little lower, actually, on that.
That was my question, if they're going to go lower. Okay, good.
If there are no other questions for Mr. Anderson, is there any other business that you'd like to see on the agenda for next month if we meet?
I just have a comment.
Okay.
Speaking of attendance, I just want to remind families that there's still time to get the flu shots for your kids before flu season hits and build up that immunity.
Ms. Wade, I'd like to introduce someone, and I didn't realize she was here.
Okay.
If you don't mind. B, would you come to voting, please? This is B. Perdue she's the Director of Development with the College of Behavioral and Health Sciences, and we were talking earlier about Mitchell Nelson, and I didn't realize she was even in the audience. So would you mind, Ms. Wade, if she makes a comment about it? But thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Gilbert. Thank you, Board, for hearing from us. We are very excited. I speak on behalf of Dr. Terry Whiteside, who is the Dean of the College of Behavioral and Health Sciences. We're looking forward to working with Mitchell Nielsen and our project yet to be named, but I think some of your concerns about the busyness, I think a focus on leadership for students as well as their teachers will be something that will be relatively easy to incorporate. As Dr. Gilbert said, we have a terrific program that we are currently serving the community with for leadership development. So we are very much looking forward to being able to implement that. And thank you so much for recognizing me.
Thank you so much, Ms. Perdue. We look forward to the exciting things that are going to happen. If there is any other business, anything you would like to add to next month's agenda? No? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Do you have a second?
Second.
So moved. We are adjourned.
I did not realize.
Thank you.